Yo, what's up, sports fans? Courtesy of Mr. Bruce Blitz's video about Derrick Rose and the Michael Jordan comparison about 1.5 weeks ago, I have decided to make another 90s retrospective special about Michael Jordan. And in this video, I'm gonna talk about what makes him unique and untouchable as the ultimate NBA championship leader. Michael's first NBA years can be put into a similar familiar situation like many other talented NBA rookies like LeBron James. He was drafted in a team that performs below the standards with mediocre insufficient supporting cast. His show was fantastic, and he took the league by storm with his flair of individual talents during the peak of the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson era until the 90s. It took many years until Michael Jordan was surrounded by a capable supporting cast, which he single-handedly took by the horns and pushed them to the championship form. But I'll talk about it later. Well, first of all, I want to talk about a special issue in which I put Magic Johnson's and Larry Bird's early success in becoming NBA champions into excessive comparison and perspective with Michael Jordan's grueling struggles in his first years, which grew into growing pains, anguish, frustrations, and all sorts of suffering any Chicago Bulls fan at this time could ever imagine. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were practically drafted into a championship caliber team already. Well, actually, their respective teams, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics, already had a very high media market status at that time, thanks to those championships that they won. So those franchises could afford to build a championship caliber roster together around these guys, and that enabled the two of them the chance to win NBA titles in their first years. I mean, think about it. For Magic Johnson to have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Cooper in his rookie season, and years later acquiring James Worthy, Byron Scott a few years later, and as well as for Larry Bird, getting the opportunity to play together with Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge, all in their first years, in the first 5 years, regarding all those aspects together, is it any mystery that Magic and Larry had more chances to win NBA titles in their first years? I mean, think about it. It is very rare to be drafted as a top pick into an organization that already possessed such a turbulent media market and a high legendary championship status in order to spend millions of dollars to build a sufficient supporting cast around you. Well, let me at this point rephrase it Bruce Blitz style. The Lakers, and obviously the Celtics, they had the highest payroll in the NBA, and again, they had the highest payrolls in the NBA, especially during those peak 80s where the game got more and more competitive than ever with the increase in athletic talents and toughness. This type of investment that the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics did, this enabled them to build and draft and invest in a sufficient supporting cast around Magic and Larry Bird in a pool. And to be in a position like Magic and Larry Bird, and I mean to be drafted in a championship caliber team, that's a luxury that not every top draft pick in their first years may enjoy, unless they may be traded under any circumstances. But you know, that is impossible nowadays thanks to the change in the NBA draft system a few years later after their arrival. And that leads me back to Michael Jordan. Now, when you put Magic Johnson's and Larry Bird's first year success into perspective with Michael Jordan's situation in his first years, you can see quite a difference in that. Because the Chicago Bulls were nothing at that time. I hardly heard a fart in the wind at the bottom of the NBA ranks. Nobody ever gave a damn about this team, because it was all about the Los Angeles Lakers, the 76ers, the Boston Celtics, the Detroit Pistons, until Michael Jordan came from out of nowhere in the NBA in the 1984 NBA draft and took the league by storm with his extraordinary individual flair of offensive arsenal. Ever since, the Chicago Bulls possessed the most exciting player in their organization. Building a sufficient supporting cast around him proved to be a very challenging task. As great and competitive as Michael Jordan was, his supporting cast was really garbage in his first 4 years. It was a bunch of unheard of guys, easy come, easy go, of former players like Orlando Waldridge and Charles Oakley in his first 3 years, and some former coaches. Kevin Loughery was one of them, as far as I remember. Oh yes, I remember Stan Elbeck as well as another one of his early coaches. I never saw his face, but I just read about them. I just read about him in that German Michael Jordan special magazine. So in other words, despite his individual talents, Michael in his first years was in the hardest situation an individual talent like him could ever ask for. I mean, for example, that 63-point playoff performance against Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics meant nothing without a sufficient supporting cast. They actually lost this game by 4 points, as far as I remember. It was all a one-man show, a 1-on-5 basketball for many years. As much as Jordan's skills grew, the team around him did not grow sufficient enough around him in his first 4 to 5 years. I mean, unheard of were the names of Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, John Paxson, Bill Cartwright, or B.J. Armstrong. With all that said, I'm going straight to the point. Michael Jordan was the ultimate, toughest, and most ferocious competitor in NBA history. I mean, you can say what you want about Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Dr. J, Isaiah Thomas. I mean, all of them mentioned. I do not dispute that they were very competitive. I mean, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were really competitive throughout their rivalries. Isaiah Thomas was really competitive late in the 80s in his struggles against the Celtics and the Lakers. I mean, all of them were way more competitive than today's NBA athletes are. And again, I must say, I do not dispute their competitiveness at their time. But no one of these extraordinary legends could ever surpass that competitive drive and heart that Michael Jordan displayed. Because Michael Jordan, in his grueling quest for an NBA title, has taken that competitiveness to another level. Very briefly and concise, referring back to my comparative perspective between Magic's first years and Larry's, what Michael had to go through and the way he suffered in that as the individually best player in the mid-80s till the 1991 season. I mean, actually it's very hard to express this in one sentence. I mean, what Michael had to go through was unimaginable, and the rivalry with Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Pistons has added an almost inextinguishable inferno into Jordan's quest for an NBA title. Let me tell you at this point that any other athlete would have lost their balls in such an unimaginable situation and begged for to be traded, bought out, or whatever. But Michael Jordan, he really exploded after those 3 straight playoff losses against their most bitter adversaries and tormentors, the Detroit Pistons, and took it upon himself to shape his supporting cast in a way that any other NBA legends could have never imagined. Like my buddy Bruce Blitz said, and in addition to that, referring this to my earlier Bulls 90s retrospective video yet again, Jordan was a freaking psycho and a tormentor in training with his team. He took them very hard by the horns. He punished and drove the shit out of them relentlessly with a lot of desire. Jordan's competitive drive was so unimaginably painful that it made players like B.J. Armstrong cry. At this point, I would like to thank everybody for posting comments on my 90s retrospective and thus correcting me about some of Jordan's stories about his grueling training regimes. So in the end, Jordan's ferocious style of leadership, which he has accumulated with all those struggles, frustrations, the Pistons nightmare, and all the negative hype about him being just a one-man show, has really shaped his supporting cast onto the highest plateau in the NBA in the 90s, along with the help of mastermind Phil Jackson. So Bruce Blitz, by all respects again, Michael did not only will his supporting cast to an NBA title, but he punished and tortured them there. Scottie Pippen has emerged into a superstar, Horace Grant into a blue-collar type, hard-head, nice bucket workhorse. John Paxson was the utility shooter. B.J. Armstrong provided fresh energy off the bench and stepped up, especially during the three-peat year. And Cliff Levingston in the 1991 finals played a huge role in the NBA finals in Game 3. All that effort, inspired by Michael Jordan's relentless enthusiasm, was the cornerstone of his hard work, blood, and tears that he shed after winning his first ever NBA title. Shortly after that, ever since the departure of Magic Johnson due to his HIV positive issues, and Larry Bird a year later after the 1992 season due to back injuries, Michael Jordan was the undisputed NBA champion of all time for the next 2 years by taking his team into a higher level with the help of his matured partner Scottie Pippen, fighting through old and new rivalries consisting of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Patrick Ewing, the New York Knicks, Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns, and thus completing something that Magic, Larry, and Isaiah could have never achieved: a three-peat. And let me tell you at this point, whatever differences and issues, confrontational disputes Michael Jordan had with the management in handling certain situations, whatever the situation was with Michael Jordan and the Bulls management, overall the Bulls franchise did a very careful and remarkable job in surrounding Jordan with an unselfish core of raw talent, which he single-handedly took to the highest stage, as already mentioned before, and that saved the franchise a lot of money over the long term. I mean, do you think they could have ever afforded to invest in acquiring talents like James Worthy, Byron Scott, Dominic Wilkins, Charles Barkley, or whatever superstar to play alongside Jordan? You gotta be kidding me. You see what I mean? Now again, in a very precise conclusion, in perspective to Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Dr. J, Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan had the hardest time out of all of them to become an NBA championship and thus the best player of all time. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were drafted into championship teams who would invest in high payrolls to build and maintain a sufficient star-like supporting cast for many years, while Jordan was drafted into a practically unheard-of franchise and had to claw his way into an unimaginable, grueling fashion. And the way he did it, that can never ever be topped again by anybody. Not by Magic, not by Larry, not by Isaiah, not by LeBron James or Dwayne Wade, nor by Kobe Bryant, not by Kevin Durant, and especially not by Derrick Rose. All that said, this is what makes Michael Jordan the best. I'm Maxi Ryu, and see you later.